Derek had hunted the same section of Manistee for 14 years, and there was nothing about that forest in the dark that could scare him. He knew the deer patterns, the bedding areas, the corridors between the hardwoods and the marsh. The blind he was walking to that morning was one he'd built himself in 2017. A plywood box 12 feet up on treated legs, 200 yards off an old logging road. Opening day of firearm season. He parked at 3:30 in the morning. 19 degrees, clear, no wind. About 10 minutes into the walk, he caught a smell that stopped him. Not pine, not cold earth. Something organic, heavy, warm. It smelled the way a deer smells when you field dress it. Fresh, wet. He scanned the tree line with his red headlamp and saw nothing. But the smell was coming from ahead of him, from the direction of his blind. It got stronger the closer he walked. By the time he reached the base of the ladder, it was thick enough to taste in the back of his throat. The door at the top latched from the inside. He'd installed it himself to keep animals out in the off-season. The latch was undone. The door hung slightly open. He figured another hunter had found it and used it. It happens on public land. He climbed up and opened the door. The inside of the blind was painted in blood. Not splattered. Painted. The walls, the floor, the bench, the shooting shelf, every surface coated in blood that had frozen to a dark sheen. Fresh enough it hadn't dried before the cold took it. He'd field-dressed dozens of deer. This was not deer blood. Deer blood is thin and bright. This was thick, almost black in the beam, and it had been put there deliberately. Handprints smeared across the walls. Finger marks dragged through the frozen blood on the shelf. He should have left. Instead, he stepped in and looked closer at the prints on the far wall. 5 fingers. A palm. But the proportions were wrong. The palm too narrow. The fingers too long. The thumb set too low and nearly as long as the index finger. Something with hands had made these, but not human hands. On the shooting shelf where you rest your bow, there was a small pile of coarse, dark hair, stiff with frozen blood, arranged in a neat circle in the center. Not dropped, placed, like an offering left for whoever opened that door next. He got out. He didn't run. Running felt like admitting he was prey. But he walked fast, back to the truck, back to the world that made sense. He went back 2 months later. The blind was gone. Not taken apart, gone. The legs, the box, the bench. Bare earth where it had stood. No holes where the legs had been anchored. Nothing. He has not hunted Manistee since. Hands that weren't human. Hair arranged like an offering. And 2 months later, a blind that had been anchored 12 feet in the air, gone with no holes left in the ground. Here's the question I want your honest answer to. The blood, the wrong handprints, the pile of hair placed dead center on his shelf. Was that a warning meant to drive him out of that forest? Or was it a marking, the way a predator marks a kill it intends to come back for? Because those two things mean very different things about why he was allowed to walk away. Tell me which one you believe. Colin had waited 3 years of preference points to draw this tag, and he'd scouted the Allegheny unit like his life depended on it. Trail cameras, topo maps. 3 trips in late summer to pattern the deer. By the Saturday of the first rifle week, he knew exactly where he'd be. In his climbing stand by 545. 18 feet up a red oak over a clearing that bordered a creek drainage. Wind in his face. Fresh sign everywhere. Tracks, rubs, a scrape line worked the night before. Around 7, he caught movement at the clearing's edge. A buck. Big body, thick neck, the kind of mature animal that spikes your heart rate before you even count the points. 80 yards out, working along the drainage, head down, browsing. Textbook. He raised the rifle and found it in the scope. 8 points at least, wide and heavy. He tracked it, waiting for it to step into a clear lane. Then the buck stopped. Its head came up. It was staring at something Colin couldn't see, down toward the creek. Ears forward, every muscle locked. He'd seen alert deer. This wasn't alert. This animal was terrified. Then it did something he had never seen a deer do. It stood up, not reared like a horse. Not for a second. It rose onto its hind legs and stayed there, fully upright, balanced, front legs hanging at its sides like arms. Its head stayed level, facing forward, at a height that put its eyes maybe 7 feet off the ground. Colin lowered the rifle. He said he wasn't thinking about shooting anymore. He wasn't thinking about anything except that a deer's spine can't do that. The pelvis, the shoulders, the weight, none of it allows for standing like that. What he was watching wasn't supposed to be possible. It stood there about 90 seconds. Then it turned its head, just the head, not the body, and looked directly at his stand, not toward it, at him. 80 yards out, dead eye contact through a scope he'd already lowered. It held that for 10 seconds. Colin said the worst part wasn't the standing. It was that the eye contact felt patient, unhurried, like it had all the time in the world and knew he didn't. Then it dropped back to all fours, smoothly, the way a person lowers into a crouch, and walked into the drainage. Not ran. Walked, like it had made its point. He sat there 30 minutes without moving, then climbed down and drove home. He didn't hunt the rest of the season. 3 days later, he went back for the trail camera he'd left. 40-some triggers, all normal deer, except one, time-stamped 7:04 that same morning, a shape in the foreground, right size and color for a deer, but upright, bipedal, facing his stand. He showed it to a friend at the State Game Commission. The man looked at it for 10 seconds, handed the phone back and said, "Delete it and don't show anyone." Colin didn't delete it. He sent it to me instead. A buck that stood 7 feet tall on 2 legs, made deliberate eye contact across 80 yards, then walked off calm like it had proven something. So here's what I genuinely can't settle. When it turned only its head to look at him, did that tell you it wanted Colin to know it had seen him? That being witnessed was the entire point? Or is a thing that lets you watch it and then walks away unbothered far more frightening than one that charges? I think one of those is scarier than the other, and I want to know which side you land on. The third account is the only one where a camera caught the whole thing frame by frame, and it comes from a woman who photographs wildlife for a living in the Gila wilderness of New Mexico. That's next. Mara wasn't only a hunter, she was a wildlife photographer who hunted, trained to document what she saw with a precision most hunters never bother with. In September 2023, she was on a solo backcountry elk hunt in the Gila. Pack in, pack out, no cell service. Just her, a cow tag, and a base camp near a high meadow. On the third day, she hiked 4 miles to a smaller meadow she'd marked on her topo. A circular clearing at 9,500 feet, ringed in old-growth ponderosa, reachable only by a barely visible game trail. At the center of it was an elk carcass. Fresh, under a day old, but nothing had killed it that she recognized. No bullet, no arrow, and no predator sign she could name. A lion caches its kill and bites the throat. Wolves tear an animal apart and scatter it. A bear leaves blunt force wreckage. This elk had none of that. It was intact, on its side. Its eyes were gone, not eaten, gone, removed cleanly. Its tongue was missing, and its chest had been opened, not torn, opened. One clean incision from sternum to pelvis like it had been done with a blade. She photographed it from every angle: time, coordinates, elevation, trained habit. 30 yards off, strapped to a pine and facing the carcass, was a trail camera. Not hers, no brand, no logo, just a matte black housing with a green light blinking, still running. It had been there long enough to record whatever happened. She swapped the SD card for a spare, standard practice when you find a mystery camera. Back at camp that night, she loaded it. 47 images. The first 43 normal. Elk through the meadow at dawn and dusk. Image 44. The elk on the ground, not dead yet, legs extended, head up, mouth open. Something standing over it, too close to the lens to focus, a dark shape filling one side of the frame. Timestamp 4:52 a.m. 45, 1 minute later. The elk dead, eyes gone, chest open. The shape lower now, crouched over it. 46, the shape looking into the lens, close enough that the frame was almost nothing but dark tissue, and one eye, throwing the camera's infrared back white, pupilless, far too large. 47, 5:16 a.m. Empty meadow. Carcass where she'd found it. Shape gone. But the camera had moved, a few degrees lower, like it had been touched. She hiked out a day early, home to Albuquerque, straight into her editing software, trying to sharpen the shape. It resisted every filter, a blur that seemed to live in the data itself. 15 years editing, and she'd never seen anything like it. The next morning, the folder was empty. All 47 gone, not in the trash, gone. The backup drive empty too. The original card in her camera, blank, formatted, zero data. 15 years of managing image files, and she had never lost a single frame she didn't delete herself. She said the thing that stays with her isn't the shape in the photos. It's that whatever wiped them knew exactly where every copy was. She has never been back to the Gila. 47 photos of something opening an elk with a clean blade cut, looking into the lens with one white pupilless eye. And by morning, every copy was wiped, down to the formatted card. Here's the real question under this one. A camera that isn't hers, no brand, pointed at a killing site nobody should have known would happen. Was that camera there to record the kill? Or was it there to record whoever came to find it? Because if it was the second one, then Mara didn't stumble onto that meadow by accident. Tell me how you read it. If you spend time in the backcountry, these 3 accounts carry 4 lessons worth more than the fear itself. Lesson 1. Learn what a real predator kill looks like, so you know instantly when something is wrong. A mountain lion caches its kill and bites the throat. Wolves scatter an animal across the ground. A bear leaves blunt force damage. If you find a carcass that is intact but missing its eyes or tongue, or opened with a clean straight cut, no known North American predator did that. That is your signal to leave, not to investigate. Lesson 2. Trust a smell before you trust your eyes. A heavy, warm, organic scent where there shouldn't be one, coming from the direction you are headed, is the oldest warning in the woods. Derek smelled it 10 minutes before he saw anything. When you catch it, stop and reassess before you keep walking. Lesson 3. When an animal's behavior breaks its own biology, you are no longer the observer. A deer that stands upright and holds eye contact is telling you something else is running that situation, and it is not you. Lower the weapon, keep your eyes on it, and give it distance. Do not close the gap for a shot or a photo. Lesson 4. Whatever you document, get it onto something offline before you leave signal range. A physical card in a bag, a second copy on a drive. The proof is always the first thing to go missing. Protect it like it matters, because it does. Thank you for trusting Obscure Nights with these accounts. If you have an encounter of your own, our submission email is in the channel bio. We read every single one. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Good night.